Alexandra Kazarian here from Los Angeles Magazine, and let's talk about Wendy Williams' conservatorship. Wendy Williams has been placed under a court-ordered conservatorship, and she is speaking out publicly, telling everybody that she is competent and she does not need to be under lock and key in a memory facility where she's being held against her will because of this court order. Does she deserve to be free, or is she mentally incompetent and needs somebody to control every aspect of her life? Let's dig in. Wendy Williams has been speaking out on podcasts mostly, on The Breakfast Show with Charlemagne the God a few times, and most recently on the new podcast, Two Angry Men with Harvey Levin and Los Angeles Magazine's own Mark Garrigus. On both of these shows, she's made appearances telephonically from a facility where she is locked in a room in a memory facility under the guise that she is incapable of taking care of herself. The theory is that she is so cognitively and mentally impaired that if she were to be allowed to walk freely, she may not know where she was and would end up harming herself in the process. So a court has kept her under lock and key in this memory facility. However, she has been able to reach out to friends and family through a cell phone that she has. And through this cell phone, she's been making a plea to the public that she is not incapable of taking care of herself and that she is being abused by the conservator who's been appointed by the court to take care of her. What does this all mean? Well, a few years ago, Wendy's bank, Wells Fargo, flagged some suspicious activity on her account. They realized that her son was taking out huge amounts of money that he was unauthorized to take out. One example was that he was supposed to take out $1,500 to rent a boat for his birthday, but instead the charges amounted to about $150,000. So the bank actually did its fiduciary duty and flagged this activity and asked the court to look into it. The court appointed a conservator over her finances. The conservator ordered a mental health evaluation, and Wendy was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, which is a very, very serious and degenerative issue, meaning that you don't get better, you only get worse. Because of that diagnosis, the court allowed the conservator to place her in a locked facility in a mental health institution where she is not allowed to leave unless the conservator gives her permission. She's also not allowed to access her finances, and nobody from her family is allowed to be her co-conservatee because of the fraud that was allegedly involved in the activities that put her there in the first place. So this is a court-appointed conservator who's being paid and who's being represented by an attorney who's also being paid. It's a little unclear whether these people are being paid by the court or by Wendy herself, but it is clear that Wendy has a lot of expenses about keeping up with this conservatorship, which may be one of the reasons why it's so hard to get her reevaluated. On these two shows that Wendy's been on, she's made the claim that nobody is keeping up with her progress, meaning she's not getting any testing on a regular basis to determine whether she's still incompetent, whether she's getting worse, or whether she's getting better. According to Wendy, who sounds very, very competent on these interviews, Wendy is saying that nobody has been in since that initial time that she was evaluated to determine what her mental status is now. In these interviews, Wendy holds conversation well. She understands where the conversation is going. She's able to contribute to the conversation, and she's very comfortable stopping the conversation when she doesn't want to talk about what's being brought up, especially when it comes to her son. Harvey and Mark asked her both if she felt like she was being taken advantage of her son, or whether if she was released from this conservatorship, she thought that her son would take advantage of her again. And Wendy was very clear. She didn't want to talk about it. She wanted the conversation to move on in a different way. Does this sound like somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, who isn't in control of their own capacities, and who isn't able to control themselves? Listen for yourself. But does this sound like somebody who's not capable of having a rational conversation? Somebody who's not able to control their own life? Somebody who, if you unlock a door, is going to be lost in the world without knowing where they are or how to get back to safety? A lot of people that are around Wendy right now, her family and her friends, believe that she's being taken advantage of not by her son, but by the conservator. People believe that she should have the right to be reevaluated, and if the findings are different than they were previously, that this conservatorship should at least be altered, if not completely taken away. Should she have control over her finances again? Should she be able to walk and travel freely? This weekend, she's going to be able to travel to Miami for her father's 92nd birthday, but only because the conservator has agreed to allow her to do that. So, a reevaluation of her mental competency may allow her to stop asking for permission and be able to be back home in her own house, sleeping on her own pillow, calling her own friends on her own time, and spending her life the way she wants to. Could the conservatorship actually be worse for her after this evaluation? It's possible. If Wendy's reevaluated and it does show that her cognitive abilities are declining, that they're getting worse, there is a possibility that this conservatorship could be extended for an even longer period of time, and that any chance she has in the future of challenging it might be weakened. However, her supporters don't think that it's going to be a problem, considering the massive difference that there is between how she's speaking and rationalizing now versus her behavior in the very beginning of the conservatorship. People close to her argue that during the beginning of the conservatorship, one of the main issues with her cognitive abilities was that she was drinking very heavily, that it was an alcohol-induced dementia, and that now Wendy's been sober for a considerable amount of time, and that there are ways to make sure that she doesn't start drinking again if she is released from this conservatorship. And you can see there is a documentary that was made a few years ago at the very beginning of all of these issues. And her abilities are night and day when you take into consideration the most recent interviews that she's done. Could the court also do some kind of a hybrid solution where they keep the conservatorship in place, keep somebody in charge of her finances so she's not taken advantage of that way again, but allow her to move freely, allow her to live in her own house, travel how she wants, but have somebody taking care of her finances so that she doesn't get into that situation? Absolutely. Today, we're exploring Wendy Williams' bold declaration against the conservatorship that she's currently under based on a court order. Legal guardianships are usually established when somebody has been diagnosed with a mental health issue that determines that they are not able to take care of themselves, either financially or physically. Here, initially, Wendy Williams was diagnosed with a mental health condition, and doctors said that she was unable to take care of herself both ways, that she was in danger of being taken advantage of financially, and that she was in danger of hurting herself if she was allowed to move freely throughout the world. Wendy has spoken out and gotten much media attention on this issue, to the point that her conservator has made an appeal to the court to have her reevaluated, mostly very likely so that the conservator herself isn't charged or isn't accused of taking advantage of Wendy. Will the judge overturn the conservatorship? We'll find out. Stay tuned.